Hello, everybody. Vasu Vaddiparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O here. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Thursday, March 4th, 2021. Let me make sure that we're all live. It says we're all live everywhere. I'm pretty sure we're good to go. Yep, we're all live and we're good to go right now. So, how's everybody doing? This is the March 4th edition podcast for the Make the Money and Run. A lot of NBA, a lot of NCAA. We're a week away from Selection Sunday, 9 days, 10 days away. Spring training in full height. We'll preview the American League Central and the NL Central. Who's the pitching staff in the American League Central between Minnesota and the White Sox, and Cleveland as the Cy Young winner in the NL Central. It's going to be an interesting NL Central. Charlie's Reds have 3/5 starting rotation back, and in that ballpark, any offense is good offense. So we'll see how it goes. But let's start out, guys. First of all, hope you guys are doing well. Let's start out with the NBA. A couple interesting things in the NBA last night. Let me put the lines up here. We'll have the lines. If you want to make any comments, we're on Facebook Live as well, both on the Stables Media page and my page, Casey's page, also as well as YouTube as well too. So here we go with that. Let's start out with the NBA last night. It was very interesting to me as we get the lines up there. Those are the lines for tonight's games, the last game before the All-Star break. But how about the game in Utah and Philadelphia last night between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Utah Jazz? Joel Embiid is my MVP. I don't care what anybody says right now. What he did at the end of the game to tie that game with that ridiculous three over Bogdanovich, and then Donovan Mitchell gets kicked out in the overtime. Philadelphia is a 3-point underdog, the best team in the East. Still don't get any respect. I would have taken that as a pick'em game, Charlie. Let's start out with you on that. What a shot by Embiid. The guy is just killing it right now as an MVP candidate.
Yeah, and again, Philadelphia is one of those teams that so far is not getting any respect, and I haven't quite figured that out. I don't know whether they're not getting enough overall media coverage. I don't know whether it's because Embiid hasn't been recognized yet because he had the injuries and coming back. I don't know whether it's because people are not respecting Doc Rivers, but they're not getting respect as a team. And you're right, Embiid, what a monster, and he's trimmed down, he's strong, he dominates out on the court, and they've just got a great cast around them, and they're a force, and they're going to be a force in the Eastern Conference all the way through out there. And I'll tell you right now, everybody's kind of crowned Brooklyn at this point. But if the big three in Brooklyn, if one of those guys goes down, and I'm not saying I hope that happens, but it's the NBA. And if one of those guys go down in particular, and maybe if one of them doesn't go down, they've got to worry about Philly. And who knows, Philadelphia may not be done adding to that roster. And if they add more elements to that roster, they add more personnel to that roster, it could be a real Donnybrook in the East all the way through to the playoff.
Go ahead, Casey.
It was a great display. I mean, I think the NBA from a league office standpoint would hate that as a finals, but I think the fans might enjoy it quite a bit because those are two of the best teams in basketball. And talking a little bit about who is the MVP leaders? LeBron James at DraftKings and FanDuel right now gets plus 175, but Joel Embiid has been slowly moving up the charts. He's 3-1, the second choice at DraftKings, and 3.5-1 at FanDuel, followed by Nikola Jokic, then Doncic, then Curry, then Giannis. So Giannis has dropped down quite a bit, while it seems like Embiid's stock is rising. Look, I've been a believer in the Sixers this whole season. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm heading up to Reno for March Madness in a couple of weeks, and I'm definitely dropping some money. They're still 5-1 to win the Eastern Conference, trailing the Sixers and the Bucks. And I just think that they're only getting better by the day. I love the way Tobias Harris is playing. He had 22 points last night as well. And I think that Embiid is a very difficult matchup for any team they may have to face in the Eastern playoffs. Now, another storyline from that game last night, Vasu. I don't know if folks caught Donovan Mitchell in the post game, but he was not very happy about being ejected after 2 technical fouls very quickly, yelling at the referees. He called the officiating bleeping ridiculous, was his exact quote. Said it's tough to go out there and see how we fight and compete and have a game like that taken from us. We're nice. We don't complain. We don't get frustrated. We fight through things, but we continually get screwed by this, And I wonder, I mean, guys, it's a conspiracy-based topic, but does the NBA not want the Utah Jazz to be there when you've got the two La La Land glamour franchises as the other contenders with the Clippers and the Lakers? Now, Vasu, obviously the Lakers last night played their butts off against the Kings, even without LeBron, almost winning that game outright. But I still think Utah, from the entire sample, it's hard to argue with their record that they're the best team. And I think Philly might be approaching that in the Eastern Conference. As Charlie said, Brooklyn's only an injury away from being in a little bit of trouble. And also, it's going to be two different styles in the playoffs, where I think the Sixers, when needed, will be able to play a little more lockdown defense than the Nets will over the course of 7-game series.
Vasu Vaddiparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O here. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 4th, powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Download the Viget app and use the MTMAR promo code. Well, Joel Embiid, 40, 19, 3 assists, 2 blocks, a ridiculous 3. I mean, you can't get better numbers like that. But as we go on to the next game, they're a half a game ahead of this guy who all of a sudden has put himself in the MVP category. What a night for James Harden. And, it's like you can't get over your ex, and it's too soon to see her again. This is just me talking. I'm not talking about Casey or Charlie, but this is me talking. Can't get over your ex, and it's too soon to go. Too soon to go. And all of a sudden, he shows up in Houston again. 29, 10, and 14. Looked very happy. 132, 114 over just a god-awful Houston team. People are saying this is his best basketball, Charlie. I'm not sure. I mean, he took them to a conference finals. They didn't get a championship. They had a good players around him. But, boy, 132, 114 over Houston. The Nets were minus 10 last night. And a lot of that is because of the fact that they got the big 3, although a lot of them aren't playing at the same time. But is he in the MVP candidacy right now, 29, 10, and 14? Or do we see how Brooklyn goes from here on out in the second half?
Well, I think you still have to, you have to see how they go in the second half, but of course he's in the MVP category right now. I mean, one of the things that is pretty remarkable to me is that I think we all said, how are they going to deal with the ball with the big 3 in Brooklyn? Well, all of a sudden, who is this unselfish guy by the name of James Harden who's distributing the basketball? I mean, this guy is, assisting everybody. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm loving watching him score, but I'm also loving watching him dish the ball. I mean, we all know that he has the capability of doing that, but watching him do that and setting other guys up to score, it's wonderful basketball. And I love seeing the beauty of it on the court. And it just proves how valuable the guy can be on a team. And if you're other teams in the East, you've got to be very, very afraid, because it's a great thing. And I'm loving watching him play ball. I have to tell you guys, when he was in Houston, I didn't enjoy watching him play basketball because I really felt it was a very selfish style of basketball. But it may be that he felt like he had to play that way in order for them to win. And frankly, the last couple of years, everything was set up for him to have to play that way. I mean, he was the offense. Well, now he's in a situation where he's not the only offensive weapon, so he can do these other things. And I'll tell you, I've never enjoyed watching Harden play basketball the way I am right now.
Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that analysis there. By the way, of course, we're here on Stables Media, and thanks for the folks checking it out on YouTube and on Facebook and all that. Don't forget, we've got a whole cavalcade of shows, and our friend Taylor Phillips checking in, reminding us that the Michigan Sports Truth podcast will be on tonight. So check out wherever you get your Stables Media podcast. That'll be at 9 p.m. Central Time, and it's a lot of fun if you like Midwestern talk. A lot of good stuff going on there. And it's funny. I thought we were going to come in and talk about T.J. McConnell being the best performer in the NBA last night, Vasu, with the Pacers getting that triple-double via the steals. But no, we will talk about James Harden. And very interesting as we look at the odds board, guys, he's 33-1 at DraftKings to win the MVP and 36-1 at FanDuel. So if you're in a state that has those books, please, I implore you, put $10 on that and try and pick yourself up 33 or $330 on it. He's playing out of his mind. You knew he was going to be motivated heading back to play in his own old stomping grounds. And what a performance. And they're hot. I mean, they've won 10 of 11. They've shown that they can win with different combinations of lineups because they haven't really had the big 3, as we're calling them, the new 3, if you will, together on the court all that much since he joined them. And I think the sky's the limit for them as long as they play a little better defense. Let's not forget they did allow 114 points to the worst team basically in the NBA, in my opinion. I mean, we could argue about it, but they're right there as a bottom feeder, I would say, in my opinion. Now, if we look at the Nets, they're on break now. A lot of teams are catching a break because they played yesterday, and they're done through the All-Star break. So they'll get almost a full week of rest or more. The Nets will be off until next Thursday. Then they've got a good one against Boston. Then an easier matchup against Detroit. And it's kind of a pish-posh mishmash, if you will, as far as good and bad teams as they get the second half going. They've got the Knicks, Pacers, Magic, Wizards, and then they start with the Western Conference team. So I think they're a team that is certainly fun to watch. I also like, Vasu, the way that Harden is incorporating the teammates. You talked about the assists. It's going to need guys like Harris and some of these other guys to come out there and shoot the ball as well for when they get to the playoffs and they start locking down Harden and Kyrie. You got to be able to distribute the ball, and I think Harden's really gone out of his way. Plus, I mean, you know, you saw the heartfelt letter he wrote to Houston. He wasn't real about having to leave, but I just think at the end of the day, he didn't feel like franchise was doing enough to make them competitive for an NBA championship. And he's past the point of accolades and caring about that. He wants to get himself a nice shiny ring, as do the other 29 teams in the association. But all in all, I think the Nets are definitely a fun team to watch, and they're a team I certainly wouldn't want to see on my schedule in the second half. The other thing from the gambling perspective, Vasu, we're going to have to keep an eye on inflated lines, because anytime a team starts playing this well, it seems like the trend is that Las Vegas will bump that up a couple of points as far as when they're a favorite, and that can really burn your bankroll. They may be a team you have to look at betting against a little bit in situations in the second half.
We'll hit the Big Ten. We'll hit the Big Ten and college stuff later. But to your point, Michigan, Illinois, a big example of that, based on the fact that Illinois didn't have their best player, and the line went up to 8.5, and Illinois destroyed Michigan on Tuesday night, which might end up being good for Michigan. All right, let's move over to the West a little bit. Casey Freelove, Charlie O, Vasu Vaddiparty, and Make the Money and Run podcast. I'm waiting for Casey to put up on the board here one day, the day that he switches over from the Sacramento Kings to the Phoenix Suns, maybe on day one of the playoff, because the Phoenix Suns, hey, look now, folks, the Phoenix Suns are in second place in the Western Conference behind Utah. And honestly, the way they play defense and with Chris Paul's leadership, I'm not so sure they're not that far behind the Utah Jazz in second place in the NBA. Casey, I'll let you start off with that. Devin Booker even got ejected the other night, and they still came back and won based on Chris Paul. Aiden's developing. Jay Crowder's a good veteran influence. Monty Williams has turned out to be if he's not as good a coach as he was before, he's certainly better, and he's in the Coach of the Year candidate. But how about the Phoenix Suns, 23-11, second place ahead of the Clippers and the Lakers, 2 games in the loss column, they're both tied for third. And then Portland, after the win over Golden State last night, is 20-14. But what about your Phoenix Suns? And I'm going to say your Phoenix Suns, Casey.
Well, I mean, when my current hometown team can barely beat the Lakers without LeBron by 1 point, or a few points, 3 points, I should say, that certainly makes me want to look elsewhere. Look, I've been a fan of the Suns since the bubble. This is the team that came out and started playing hard last year, and they've certainly translated it. Adding Chris Paul has done nothing but help them. And, you know, even give Bridges and Kaminsky a little credit, because we're going to talk about Booker and Ayton's really improved here as he's moved into the NBA. But I think it comes down to really buying into their coaching philosophy and just having a sound leader like Chris Paul, who's been in these dogfights before and knows how to win when it really matters. By the way, you mentioned Booker. If you're looking for a real flyer for MVP, guys, he's getting you 150-1 at DraftKings right now in the MVP race, 85-1 over at FanDuel. Another one, if I've got 10 extra bucks to burn, why the heck not take a chance, because they're certainly surging. And we're looking at, you know, how it's going to go in the second half. Tonight's game's almost a gimme, considering that Steph Curry and Draymond Green have both been announced as out, and it's a home game against the Warriors. So I think the Suns probably are going to pick up that victory. And then the second half gets going with, I don't want to say easy games, but they've got Memphis. They've got 2 with the Timberwolves. They've got some of the also-rans in the East on their schedule as well. So I think the sky's the limit for them. I will say this, Charlie. I am surprised that they are the second best team record-wise in the Western Conference. Nobody would have had that coming in. Nobody would have had the Lakers and Clippers beneath the Jazz and the Suns. So it really is a testament to how well they've come together. And I don't think any of the three of us are that surprised, Chuck, because we saw it in the bubble. They were the one team that came out and really showed that they had been practicing and working together in the offseason, and it just translated right on into 2020-21.
Yeah, Casey, you know, I think when they had that hiccup with Ayton, when they drafted him, and that didn't instantaneously turn into being the superstar kind of draft they wanted. And then when Luka turned out to be who he was, and of course, a lot of teams whiffed on Luka. So it's not just them. It's not just the Kings. It's Atlanta as well, and you got all those teams involved there. I think everybody kind of, okay, well, there's Phoenix. They're going to stay at the bottom for a while, but they've been working at this, and they've been tweaking that. They've been tweaking that lineup, and they've been working at it. Things have been adding through, and they've been finding players. I mean, you talked about Kaminsky. I mean, they added him in, and all I can think of every time I watch him on the court doing something, the Kings had him in camp, and they kept him all the way through preseason, and I thought he was playing pretty. I've always been a Kaminsky fan. I liked him. I like the way he spreads the floor. I like the way he can, as a big man, shoot a three. And I said, you know what? They need to keep that guy because they're going to need him later on down the season. And they jettisoned him. And now look what's happening. They got a team that's on top of them and I'm going, they could still use that guy. So they have a great eye for talent. And it's not all superstars, but they put together a good team of guys. And then Chris Paul, he's been the catalyst to bring all those guys together. They got that veteran guy who's out there, who's like another coach with talent, and he's bringing it together. And I mean, would we have said, hey, they're going to be the number 2 team in the Western Conference? Of course not. But it's sure fun to watch.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Vasu Vaddiparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O, the Make the Money and Run podcast, Thursday, March 4th. Join us on Facebook Live, Stables Media YouTube page as well. We're powered by Stables Media and sponsored by Viget. Download the MTMAR, use the MTMAR promo code on Viget to get in there and compare your action with ours as well. I'll say this about the same teams. I don't get excited about the draft for the NFL or the NBA. I get excited where the players go. But every year when you see the same teams in the same draft position, it's like, ooh, we're going to get this player. We're going to get that player. Big BFD. I almost swore there, but BFD. Big deal. The same teams end up in the same spot every year. The New York Jets. Oh, Joe Douglas. He knows what he's doing. Does he really know what he's doing with the New York Jets? I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, Nick Caserio, he came from the Patriots. Well, answer a goddamn phone call. Maybe you might want to trade your quarterback and get all these picks if you want to do that. Freaking crying out loud. I just don't get excited about draft night. And they're like, oh, tune in on primetime for NBA draft night, or tune in on primetime for NFL draft night. All right, I digressed a little bit. Let's finish up the NBA a little bit. A couple other scores to go through here. Again, thanks to everybody on Facebook Live, and you can download and subscribe us anywhere you get your podcasts, on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Like I said, so last night in the NBA, Casey mentioned the Sacramento Kings. I did not even cover the 3.5 points without LeBron. The Lakers are still pretty good. 123-120 victory over the Lakers last night. Game went way over Dallas. I don't know what to make of Dallas. Apparently they played defense for Oklahoma City. Did not last night. 97-89 victory. -5 there. Charlotte, Minnesota. Charlotte 135-102 over Minnesota. They're in 6th in the East. That's very interesting to me. One game behind Boston in the win and loss column. Boston's 18-17 and Charlotte's 17-18. And if the Charlotte Hornets end up getting to be the 4 seed and host the series with that offense, that's unbelievable. And by the way, they have to leapfrog the Knicks, who nobody thought was going to be there, in the 5th seed. So the Knicks and Celtics right now would be the first round matchup. And then last night in the NBA, as we wrap up, Casey, Chicago, New Orleans, and Detroit, all underdogs that won outright. Do we have any idea going into the All-Star weekend what the heck is going on in the NBA?
If you're betting the Eastern Conference, I mean, you got to really strap on your sneakers tight and make sure that you've laced them up, because it is very difficult. I think a perfect example of that will take place tonight with the Toronto Raptors, who I literally was in love with not 7 days ago, who have just fallen off the map. They're getting 8 points at Boston against the Celtics team that hasn't really been playing that great of late either. There are no perfect fits in the East. I think it's going to be fun. I know everybody wants to hop on Brooklyn, but again, you've got to have defensive efficiency throughout the playoffs, and I'm wondering about that. There's going to be a lot of wiggle room, and I think the one good thing if you're Adam Silver is you got to be saying, well, once we can get a few fans back in the stands, people in all these markets are certainly going to be interested, because there's so many teams that are stacked up on top of each other. I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, come on, you've got, as you mentioned, the 5th place New York Knicks right now, the playoffs started, are 18-18. And basically, they've only got a 4-game lead all the way down to the Cavs, who are 14-22. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different franchises that have a chance to move up the charts. And Lord knows what could happen. I think, Charlie, one thing we've seen, a team that you've been talking about a lot, the Miami Heat, they're playing better, 6-4 in their last 10. They finally moved back into playoff positioning at 17-18. I think they'll be one to watch in the second half. I've got a guy I work with here who's from Kentucky, so he's absolutely just doting over the New York Knicks because it is basically Team Kentucky NBA East. If you look at their roster, and I'm real surprised that they're 18-18. But I think what it all comes down to is we don't really know in the East who's the best. And the cool part is we don't know in the West who's the best. So as far as you can call it parity, some people would call it mediocrity. As a fan of professional basketball, I'm loving it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, Casey. And I'm calling it COVID, because it's created this whole craziness. But let's take the Knicks, for instance. Okay, the Knicks didn't get all that better on offense. But what they did do is they got Thibodeau, and he's gone in, and Thibodeau said, you're going to learn to play defense. Okay, now I know that's heresy in the NBA, but he's got that team playing a lockdown defense, and it still works in the NBA. And so he's going in, and he's making them play defense, and he's got that team playing tough, playing hard, and all of a sudden, they're an interesting team. And everybody really believes now, even though James Dolan has been notoriously tight-fisted with his money, they really believe that he's going to open up his wallet a little bit and let them add to that team before the trade deadline, and they're going to get interesting. Everybody believes that Boston is going to add a player or two. As a matter of fact, the most talked about player going to Boston right now still is Harrison Barnes from the Sacramento Kings, because everybody knows the Kings aren't going anywhere. That's a contract that makes sense for them to pick up. A couple of years at $25 million a year in NBA money, that's cheap. He really fits leaving the Kings because he's a little long in the tooth for what they're trying to do. He would fit perfectly into that Boston roster right now. That would be an addition. They think they'll probably add two players there. All of a sudden, Boston gets a lot better. Philly will probably add somebody. It's going to get really interesting in the East, because those teams that are good, they're going to add. And so now what we thought was going to be, well, Brooklyn, everybody's going to get good. And I really expect Toronto to add somebody as well. So, I mean, you look around at the bottom teams, and those teams are all, they have good players that they don't need, and they've got contracts that they don't want. And there are players available to be sucked up by teams who want to play.
Some of you out there that are interested in the wagering aspect of this, check out the Houston Rockets box scores the last 10 games before the Brooklyn Nets got to them. This Houston Rockets team was averaging about 92 points a game, and they get 112 on Brooklyn. So tell me when they play defense before we start talking about it. Then one improvement from last week to this week is that we got one more team in the East that's above 500. We went from 4 to a whopping 5 over 500 in the Eastern Conference. So congratulations to the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks for being 500 and above, considering how the East is. All right, let's move on to college basketball. The Big 12 has 5 games tonight. Conference schedules are going to end this weekend. Conference tournaments start next week. Some of the other smaller conferences are starting tonight as we put it up there. The A10, the MVC, Missouri Valley Conference, OVC, the Ohio Valley Conference, the West Coast Conference, all start. I'm still thinking about the vaccinations and the anti-Catholic sentiment towards the vaccination. So sorry, Johnson & Johnson. All start first round games Thursday. The A10, I'm 2-0 in the A10. I didn't get a chance to post it, but Duquesne is a +5 on my side tonight. That got an outright victory, and UMass, the Minutemen, shout out to John Calipari, who blew a Final Four with UMass, ended up winning by 30 tonight over I forgot who they played, but they ended up winning by 30. So I'm 2-0 to start the day. But let's go to the Big 12 here. That right now the best conference in college basketball. I'm not sure how good the Big 10 is from the bottom teams to about maybe 7 or 8 in the conference. But the Big 12, here are the Big 12 lines that we have tonight. Baylor is 12, over Oklahoma State. Casey, I know we're big on the Big 12. That seems like a lot there. West Virginia, after that game the other night, 13 over TCU. Texas Tech is 17 over Iowa State. Iowa State just gave Baylor a tough game. And then Kansas, I don't know what they're doing playing a non-conference game. Maybe they had to make up a cancellation. But the game of the night might be in Norman, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 2-point favorite, 142.5 over Texas tonight. So let's hit the Big 12, and we'll scroll across the other lines as we get to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a very exciting night. Obviously, that Baylor line just kind of popped when I opened up my odds this morning, -12. I mean, clearly they think the public's going to jump on them. Anybody who's watched the Cowboys play the last couple of games against their in-state rival at Bedlam has to think that might be a good spot. I'm going to shy away from the game because they befuddled me, which is pretty hard to do because I pretty much bet every day. But that is an interesting line for sure. And if Baylor is who we think they are, they should win that game convincingly. But I would not be shocked at all if Cade Cunningham and company are in contention right there in the second half. They are playing excellent team basketball. You talk about the feature game, the Red River rivalry shootout, whatever the hell we're going to call it, the basketball version with Texas and Oklahoma. One thing you want to keep an eye on tonight, the Sooners went to the line a ton in Austin in the previous matchup. They outshot the Longhorns, I think, by like 10 or 12 free throws as far as attempts, and that's what helped them get a win. Is it hard to beat a team twice in one season? Yes, it is. But when we get to our picks later, I'll tell you why I think it's very possible tonight that Boomer Sooners going to get back on track. Look, I love their coach, Lon Kruger. I think Austin Reeves has proved that he's a good player. He's got that kind of it factor for the Sooners, and I don't foresee them continuing this losing streak. Now, contrast out the Longhorns. They're another team that's hard to figure out. 15-7, 9-6 in conference. Love their coach, love their talent, love their defensive efficiency. But this is going to be a real true test going on the road to Norman, and I do like that line there. Not much to say on Kansas. And another thing, Charlie, people are going to want to look at is how does West Virginia bounce back tonight? Look, they played their butts off in that second half to force overtime. They end up losing and not covering against Baylor in that big-time matchup, which for whatever reason the basketball gods put on at 2 p.m. Pacific the other day so nobody could watch. But I think that Huggs got his team playing very well. And look, when we talk about future betting, I like to really kind of pad my portfolio. You don't just go in on one team. You allot your bankroll, and then you spread it around to try and grind out a profit. That is the way that I've rolled, and it's worked very well for me since well before we started this program. So if I'm sprinkling my money around, I'm going to be looking at teams like West Virginia, a team like Oklahoma State. Why can't they make deep runs when you've got talent like this? And to Vasu part, Chuck, I think that they have surpassed the Big Ten. I know the Big Ten still has teams ranked right up there at the top, and they've got good teams. But I think that Michigan loss really made the whole nation hit the pause button as far as the hype on this conference.
Yeah, Casey. I mean, they're eating their own right now. I mean, they really are. That's become all of a sudden the crazy conference, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do to each other in the tournament because it's nutso time in the Big Ten, and so they're going to all be. I think they all believe now they can beat each other. And that's a dangerous situation going into a tournament time. I think to me, the game of the night to watch is going to be that Baylor OK State game. I'm not going to put any money on it, but if I were going to put money on it, I have to tell you, I'd be tempted to go underdog in that game. I mean, we've been talking about Baylor rust, and they're still coming back. I mean, I know they beat West Virginia, and I know all those kinds of things, but I'm still worried about that long layoff and that effect that it's had on them. And OK State, boy, that's a team that's playing hard. And from a wagering standpoint, I'm not saying do it, but if you're thinking about the game, look at the numbers, look hard at the underdog there. We know a young lady who's been doing very, very well with him. And she might just tell you go underdogs. That Texas-Oklahoma game, yeah, that'll be a whale of a basketball game. And I tend to like Kruger's teams at home, frankly. And Texas to me is hard to figure out this year. They've just been inconsistent, and they give me heartburn. And I don't like to wager on a team where I got to take Rolaids before I watch the game, and that's exactly what I have to do when I watch Texas. So there you go. And I like your theory about for futures spreading that money around a little bit, and especially the way West Virginia's playing this year, but always with Huggins, they'll go deep. I mean, Huggins' team is not going to be a team that's going to lay a bomb on you in the first round.
Hey, one other thing, Vasu, I was looking at Joe Lenardi's bracketology, and of course I trust Joey brackets because he's almost flawless every single year. The way that the tournament is set up right now, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's Big 12 friendly. That was one of the reasons I wanted to kind of hype up the conference. I was looking at the projected seeding lines and who the potential 1 and 2 seeds would be in each region. I could really make a case that we could have 3 teams maybe from this conference in the Elite 8, and who knows how that goes for the Final 4. But top to bottom, I mean, they're playing very well. The resurgence of Kansas has really got me excited. The way that Oklahoma State played the way that I thought that they would earlier this year has me going. The coaching acumen in this conference is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm really right now buying the Big Ten as the best conference in America, and we'll see tonight. I think that, and I want to get your thoughts on Baylor. Doesn't that 12 seem just a little bit high for a team like Oklahoma State that just beat their rival 2 games in a row? I guess the logic is that Baylor really kind of got their wind in the second half, and maybe that's where the rush showed up. But as Charlie said, we probably need maybe another game or two to see if that's the case.
Well, I'll be very interested from the standpoint of who else can shoot the ball for Oklahoma State, because they're a good 3-point each shooting team. They had a rough go with Oklahoma. They played Oklahoma 2 games in 3 days, and they were able to come out with victories both on the road and at home on Monday night. And the fact is that they have to play defense against Baylor. Baylor, if they shut down Cunningham, who else is going to make shots for Oklahoma State? And that's the big issue going in. All right, in the Big 12, are we going to feel sorry for Michigan State tonight after what happened to Michigan the other night? 12-point favorite over a Tom Izzo team. It's March. 140 points is the total, and Iowa went down from 17.5 to 17. 154 over Nebraska. But boy, that how about Illinois on Tuesday night without Sumu? Comes out, Kaufman, their center. He took apart Dickinson, and they just blew out Michigan. Charlie, you're the Big Ten guy here, so what do you think about what happened with Illinois the other night? They're good, and as soon as they get the Sumu back, they're going to be right there in Final Four contention as well.
Boy, they came in and just made that conference interesting, didn't they? I mean, frankly, I didn't even watch the game. I said, okay, that's a Michigan game. I don't need to watch that. And I saw that score, and then I went back and saw the highlights, and I'm going, holy cow, what happened? I mean, they just decided to make that whole conference go upside down. And poor Michigan State. I mean, not tonight. They got to go into Chrysler and face that. I mean, that's terrible. Now, the one thing I don't feel too bad about for the Spartans is the fact that they beat Indiana the other night. So they probably sealed their ticket. They've punched their ticket to go into the tournament, so they're probably all right. But oh man, that's going to be a terrible thing tonight, because the Wolverines are going to be they're going to be pumped up, and they're going to be ready to lay one on somebody. And unfortunately for the Spartans, it's going to be them. So it's going to be go to school time tonight.
Don't forget, Vasu, they're going back to back too. It's at Michigan, and then Sunday at home against Michigan. So
that's right. I forgot about that.
That's a hell of an end of the season, guys.
No doubt about it. And I'll be interested to see what Michigan State comes out with, but I'm not so sure, and not to disagree with Charlie, but it makes for good radio, good TV, is that Michigan State, I'm not sure, has punched their ticket, because Indiana is not considered a quad 1 win. And now they've gotten 2 wins, and they did beat Illinois and Ohio State at home, but on the road, they haven't really done much against top 10, top 25 teams.
Guys, I've been reading some bracketology today, and I have to tell you, it's a good thing that I calmed down before we went on air, because I'm so furious right now reading what I'm reading, and I am so sick, and I'm not going to go off. I'm not going to be the angry old man today. I really want to be, but I was determined not to be. But I am so sick of reading about quality quad 1 losses that I'm ready to pull my teeth out without any Novocaine. I mean, seriously, when did sports switch to where a quality loss counts more than a win? And I know I've been preaching that this year nothing's going to be fair, but this quality loss thing isn't just now. This has been coming over the last 10 years, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop. I don't care about a quality loss. I care about wins. And, I know this is all about eyeballs and money and ratings and everything else, but I seriously, I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting tired of it. When you got a losing record in your conference, you don't deserve a ticket. I'm sorry. You just don't deserve a ticket.
Casey, how do we equalize out teams? I mean, you're talking about better conferences, power conferences. Gonzaga's in the WCC. They don't get a lot of respect. I can't think of another mid-major that's going to compete, but I know quality losses versus quality wins. I get it. You have to win. You have to win your games to get into the tournament. But how do you equalize it out? We have Ken Pom and we have all these other analytics and all these other stat factors. But how do you equalize it as we get to brackets? Because this is a topic every year at this time as we get to conference tournaments.
Absolutely. I'm looking at bracketresearch.com, and they've got an Excel spreadsheet here that would take us probably the next 3 hours to input just into the Excel spreadsheet as far as figuring out the quality quad 1, quad 2, quad 3 wins. Again, we've made this point since COVID began. Nothing is typical. So, I mean, I kind of have to agree with Charlie as far as, maybe this year we don't lean as heavy on these quad 1, quote, quality losses. What is a loss? A loss is a loss. And your schedule is your schedule. Once you get to conference play, especially, basically it's just a crapshoot as to whether or not you were playing a quad win team, because that's based on coaches and the Associated Press voting as the best teams are. And as we've seen, outside of Gonzaga, who's played consistently excellent this year in a lower tier conference, by the way, anybody can beat anybody. Nothing shocks me anymore. Nothing's going to shock me if these underdogs win. Even if Michigan State beats Michigan, I'm not going to be like, okay, well, that's it. I'm jumping off the Wolverine bandwagon. So I think it's probably good fodder for folks like us that enjoy sports, enjoy the sports media, like talking about it. It's good banter. But when it comes down to, when we get to the second weekend of the madness, it's not going to matter who you lost to, in early February. That's not going to come into play. It'll be who's surging right now. We see it time and time again. And I think, Vasu, when you and Chuck and I get together and compare our brackets, all three of us are going to have wild variations as far as who we think is going to go far. And this is another year where we can see a team like a Loyola of Chicago from years back. Everybody remembers Sister Jean coming out of a bracket and being a 7, a 6, a 5 seed, and making it all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, don't have a quad 4 loss early in the year, because that'll definitely hurt you, and you'll have to fight your way back. So based on the 4 quadrants, I guess we'll go that way. All right, just a couple of quick notes here from the Big East and the ACC. Villanova, boy, they really looked good last night after all the Creighton hubbub. 72-60 over Creighton. They covered the 5 very easily. They were up by 19. But they lost Cole Gillespie, and Jay Wright's one of the only coaches that has his juniors and seniors stay for 3 or 4 years, and they end up being good pros. Whereas a lot of guys that stay after their year one become suspect. It's an inverse relationship where the earlier you leave, the higher projection you have, and the longer you stay, ends up being a lower projection. So Cole Gillespie, a junior with Villanova, he goes down to a knee injury. They'll have an MRI probably. UConn playing really well over Seton Hall. They were favored by 1.5. They win by 11. And the ACC, Florida State really took it to Boston College. I can't figure out Florida State, Casey. And then North Carolina State upset Notre Dame last night. Notre Dame doesn't play any defense, but North Carolina State didn't have all their guys for about a 2-week period. And they're right there in it. And the ACC, of course, power conference. So what do you make of these two things real quick before we get to the back?
The ACC, it's very difficult to figure out, because each one of these teams has had a loss where you've kind of been left scratching your head. And by the way, let's not fade Georgia Tech. They're playing pretty well. 10-6 in conference. I know 14-0 doesn't kind of float everybody's boat, but very weird as I look at the conference standings to see North Carolina and Duke so far down the pack. And we've been talking week after week off how many teams this conference is going to end up getting in. I love Charlie's point about you better have a damn winning record in your conference. Worst case scenario, you better play in the best conference and have a 500 record. That's about my cutoff as far as letting you in. Now, as I say that, we look at Carolina, 9-6. We look at Duke, 9-8. We know both those teams are very well versed and acclimated to play in the ACC conference tournament. So I'm not going to be completely shocked if either one of those ends up making it all the way to the final. I want to pick Florida State as the best team in this conference. I want to put them in my Elite Eight. but I just can't do it based on consistency. Now, I'm saying that about a 15-14 that's also been dramatically affected by COVID as far as the amount of games they've been able to play. They're kind of a Baylor junior as far as that vein. I don't mean as far as the quality of talent on the floor, but they're a good team. They're going to be a tough out. I still think Virginia, when they play that lockdown defense, can be good, and I think Virginia Tech's right there as well. But Charlie, as we've ranked the conferences throughout the year, the ACC has been on the downside of the ticker while we've seen the Big 12 kind of surging at this point. I'm not saying the ACC is any worse than the, quote, third best Power 5 conference, but if you're a fan over there on top of the road, anywhere in the eastern United States, you're going to just be scratching your head with how this season has gone. It's upside down almost.
Yeah, it's just not typical. I mean, and conferences are going to have that. That's just the reality, especially because there's greater opportunities for other conferences to recruit in your regions now than there ever has been before. And so you're going to have years where things aren't going to happen. And right now, this is just not an ACC year. Now watch one of the ACC teams wind up winning the tournament. Okay. I mean, wouldn't that be just the irony of the whole thing? But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right too. When you say, watch Carolina or watch Duke, watch one of them wind up in the Final Four, because you got coaches who know how to take teams deep and everything else. Anything's possible at this point, but it's just top to bottom. It's not been a great ACC year.
The game I worked last night in the Pac-12, USC, boy, they put a hurting on Stanford. They are the best team in the Pac-12, 79-42 over Stanford, who was pretty good at the end of the year. UCLA had a lead on Oregon. Oregon came back to win 82-74, both easy. Well, not easy for Oregon, but USC was definitely an easy cover. Oregon, I did have -5.5 over UCLA. They came back, missed 3 away from a non-cover for me from that standpoint. USC clearly the best team in the Pac-12. We don't really need to talk about that. Probably they'll get 3 teams in there. Colorado's the only game tonight. I think they're a 10-point favorite over Arizona State. I'll be interested to see what happens with Arizona State coming into Colorado, because Colorado's got and McKinley Wright, going back to our earlier conversation, one of those guys that Ted Robinson was talking about. We should be celebrating guys that stay in college, but he's there 4 years, and he's going to be considered a project coming into the NBA, but he should make a roster next year for all the progress that he did. All right, Vasu Vaddiparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O. This is the Make Money and Run podcast for March 4th, 2021. We said we're going to preview. We want to preview all the baseball this week so we can get the conference tournaments on next week. So today we did the East the other day. Let's get to the American League Central a little bit. These are the World Series odds. The ones in the parentheses are to win the pennant, so that we have no confusion this time. The White Sox at 900, plus 900 and 400 to win the American League pennant. Cleveland at 6,000, plus 2,300 to win. Detroit 15,000, plus 6,000. 12.5 for KC. Minnesota, kind of interesting that they're a little bit higher than I thought they would be. Everybody seems to think the White Sox are going to be there. Their top 5 hitters are playing the Giants today. Top 4 hitters in that lineup are really good. Abreu's in there. Moncada's in there. He's had a good year. I'm not sure about their pitching yet, even though that is a team that I do root for in the American League. Cleveland still has Shane Bieber. Minnesota's pitching is underrated. Maeda finished second in Cy Young last year, and they've got some guys. And then White Sox signed Hendricks as their closer. Not sure who Minnesota's closer going to be. Maybe that's why their lines are up that high. I mean, we don't even need to talk about Detroit and Kansas City, but Kansas City has 4 good starters. Anything can happen. We're back to 162 games this year, so I'll let Casey throw a couple minutes out here on the American League Central.
Well, I want to start with the top team, and that is the Chicago White Sox, because everybody watching and observing the Southsiders is wondering, look, you don't bring in a 76-year-old guy who has a very storied past as a manager unless it's win or bust right now. That reminds me when the Marlins picked up, was it Jack McKeon back when they won that second World Championship, I think? Another older guy who was able to kind of steer the boat. You got to like Giolito, Keuchel, and Lynn as your top 3. I mean, that's going to be a powerful bunch. And let's not forget, guys, this was the team, the kind of Padres of the American League last year. With just 14 games left, they had a huge lead. They kind of faded at the end of September, and then they lost to the A's in the first round of the playoffs, which I think surprised a whole lot of people. So I think they're going to come out motivated, crisp, and ready to go. The Cleveland story is also interesting because they've got so many new guys on their team. They essentially got rid of 2 of their best players with Lindor and Carrasco going over to the Mets. So now you've got Obviously, Shane Bieber's good. Zach Plesac is good as well, I think. But then after that, Savali, McKenzie, Quantrill is the projected rotation. I'm just not sure how much I'm buying that. And the Twins, look, we know they've got the bats to put up all kinds of insane numbers. How will that rotation be led by Amaya? And then you've got, Barrios and Pineda as well. So I think as we're stacking it up, Chuck, in our way too early look at this, because spring training just started, I don't think they necessarily got it wrong, projecting the White Sox to be such a strong favorite to win this division. And I would think right now, as my early World Series teams not named the New York Yankees, they've got to be at the top of your list.
Yeah, guys, I have to tell you, I've loved Tony La Russa. I loved him when he was with the Sox the first time. I loved him in Oakland. I cried when he left Oakland. I loved him in St. Louis. I hated him in St. Louis because he killed my Reds when he was in St. Louis. And I absolutely detest the fact that they've brought him back to Chicago, because there's two things. I think he's been away from the field too long, and I don't want to detail it, but I think some off-field issues right now have me very antsy. And I'm just not sure that a team with this talent that he's ready to manage. And I think he may be the wild card issue right now that may be a problem for them. And I'm really concerned about that. I mean that very sincerely. And I'm talking about a guy that I love, but I think he could be a problem. And I like Minnesota. And I have to tell you right now, if you made me lay money down on who I think is going to win the Central right now, I would put my money on Minnesota. And running the field, managing the team on the field right now would be my issue there. And everybody else, God bless them. The poor people in Detroit and Kansas City, there's no better fans in the world than in those two cities. And somebody's got to help those two teams. I mean, seriously. I mean, Major League Baseball needs to go in there and have a come to Jesus meeting with both the ownerships there and saying, look, your fans have been too loyal for too long, and you've got to spend some money and put some teams on those fields, because they've got wonderful facilities, they've got wonderful fans, and it's time to do something to bring real baseball back to those towns. And I mean that passionately.
Yeah, and I agree with your points as far as if you're going to take a flyer on a team, why not? I agree. I mean, I'm also in that camp where it's like, look, I love Tony La Russa. I was an A's fan as a kid growing up here in Northern California, but has the game passed him by? And the front office has said that all the off-the-field issues will not be a problem once the season starts, but who knows? I mean, we'll just leave it at that. We don't need to blast the guy. While we wait for Vasu to join us back, just since we're giving our initial thoughts, let's bounce over to the NL Central, Chuck, which has got to be the most damn difficult division in all Major League Baseball. As far as teams that are, got a chance to win the whole thing, it's crappy. Obviously, the entire world loves what the Cardinals did this offseason. And I'm surprised they're not getting a little bit more heat as Vasu joins us back, talking a little NL Central here, Vasu. I love what the Cardinals have done here in the offseason. They've obviously got a great chance to be very competitive this year, but it's hard to figure out if all these teams play up to their potential, who is the clear-cut favorite. One thing I know, the Pirates will probably be the worst team in the National League, but as far as the rotations, the offensive talent on each of these teams, Cubs, Reds, Brewers, and Cards, it's not that easy to stack up. And that's why you're seeing some very inflated odds across the bottom of the scroll there, folks, and the bottom of the screen. As chances to win the World Series, there isn't really, a clear-cut team. I guess you could say the Cardinals would be the choice there. But if I'm talking about teams that did work here in the offseason, I'm really impressed with St. Louis, and I'm looking forward to seeing them spring training before I kind of get my real feel for how this division is going to shake out.
I want to know how St. Louis's bullpen is going to be. We all know about Arenado. We all know about Goldschmidt. We all know about what their capabilities are on the offensive side. But defensively, they were down last year. They were probably the best team in the NL Central last year. But unfortunately, their defense let them down. We must be really hot because we're so hot. It's burning up my internet right now as I travel. So we just go from that. So it'll be interesting to see what the NL Central and the AL Central provide in terms of rotations, in terms of bullpen, in terms of offense. I do like the White Sox in the AL Central. I still think Cincinnati has something to say about that, even though they lost Trevor Bauer and Disclafini from their rotation. They've still got guys that can throw, and their offense is really good as well too. So they probably won't win, but they'll probably be right there in the wild card scenario for the wild card as well too. Tomorrow we'll preview the AL West and the NL West. Let's close this out before I get too hot on my internet again. Let's close this out with picks. I'm going to start with Casey on his picks. Put them up there for him, and you can kind of explain what you got going. A 13-1 run. Did you mistype on your comment there, Casey?
No, I'm hot. 13-1, my last 14. 2-0 this week, and feeling good, guys. I took my record from 500 all the way up to 27-15 on the season. 10.5 units. If you're riding with me, let's keep the momentum going. And Charlie, I'm sorry we didn't get your thoughts on the NL Central. I certainly want to hear what you think about the Reds. We'll get to that on another program. All right, 2 picks for you today. No, feeling as confident as I have coming into this show the last time on Monday, but I'm riding with the Sooners. Look, they're on a 3-game losing streak. They just got beat by their in-state rivals twice. You're home in Norman. You've got a great coach in Lon Kruger. And as I mentioned, they really outshot the Longhorns at the line. They had a bunch more free throws in the last matchup. They also played good defense, which is the key to beating Texas. So I'm riding with Oklahoma -2 tonight. In the NBA, look, I've watched almost every Kings game this year. They didn't cover last night. They don't have Tyrese Haliburton tonight. And Portland showed as long as Damian Lillard is active and healthy, they're going to put a crap load of points on the board. So I'm taking the Blazers -2.5 in the first half tonight. I feel for some reason Vegas wants to keep back door this one at 4 at the end. So I think Portland will build that halftime lead, and then it'll be a very entertaining second half. Oklahoma -2, Portland Trailblazers first half -2.5. I play safe.
Go ahead, Charlie.
All right. Well, I'm 0-2 so far this week, and that doesn't thrill me. But I'm going to try to get healthy tonight. But I'm a little scared because I'm playing totals tonight, and every total I have's got a hook on it, which really makes me nervous. But we'll see how we go. I'm starting off with some college basketball. I've got Canisius and Siena to start off with. I'm going over there at 140.5. Then I'm going into the Missouri Valley tournament. I'm taking Illinois State versus the University of Northern Iowa, and we're going to take over there at 139.5. Then I'm going over to the well, hello there. My wife's coming in to tell me goodbye. Goodbye, dear. Hello, that's Miss Lindy.
Win some money. Win some money.
Isn't that nice? 43 years of marriage, and she still loves me. That's a beautiful thing there.
I think she's checking on where your checkbook is for the bets.
She doesn't know where that is. And then in the NBA, I've got Toronto and Boston. I'm going to take under 114 in the first half. I like that one because you got 2 teams there that are not scoring well. So that's why I'm going there. And then my final one, 2 teams that can't score but play great defense, Detroit and the Knicks. I'm going under in the total there at 207.5. And Dwayne Casey's last game as the head coach in Detroit, I'm pretty sure.
All right, my picks are going to be. I'm going to take the Denver Nuggets over Indiana -4 tonight in Indiana. Denver playing really well. They're starting to move up in the standings a little bit. In terms of the NBA, I'm going to take Miami +2 at New Orleans tonight. I just like the way the Heat's playing. I know they lost the other night to Atlanta, but when you play a team basically 3 times in a row, you're not going to win every game in that scenario. And I do like Charlie's under 207.5 in the Detroit New York game. And then in college, I'm going to go with Texas because I don't like the way Oklahoma played the last 2 games. I'm going to go Texas +2, and then I'm going to take Colorado -10, and then I'm going to go with Michigan -12 tonight. So all the and that adds to my 2-0 already that I had from the A10. They're documented. I'll put that up tomorrow. And then I've also got Dayton -3.5. They're in the second half right now. They're up 8 with 7:44 to go. So it's an A10 day for me, and hopefully an A10 means A10 comma, dollar sign. That too. So we'll take it from there. Tomorrow afternoon, 4:15, 1:15 Eastern on 1:15 Pacific. Make the Money and Run podcast. We'll preview the AL West, NL West. We might have a guest. Go ahead, Charlie.
Vasu, before we wrap up, we've got to make mention of the fact that a good friend of ours, Lawrence Fan,
yes,
who is the sports information director at San Jose State, today is celebrating his 40th year as the sports information director at San Jose State. Lawrence has worked so hard for that university, has always been understaffed, underfunded. I mean, nobody can believe how this man has worked in such a dedicated manner for that university. I mean, no one would work as hard as he has. I'm proud to call him my friend. He also has bit me in the hiney when I was young to push me to be better. And Lawrence, I'm proud to call you my friend, and congratulations on a job well done.
Yeah, nice job, Lawrence Fan. 40 years. I remember when he started in the mid 80s. He was already 5 or 6 years in. I didn't deal with him much with baseball, but when I got into San Jose State broadcasting, 98.5% of the things he did outstanding and correct. The other 1.5 probably have to do with me. So sorry about that, Lawrence, for the last 35 years. So we'll just take it from there. So congratulations to Lawrence Fan. All right, like I said, tomorrow, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific, on the Make Money and Run podcast, we'll preview the AL West and the NL West. We might have a guest on. Daniel Lust is going to come on and talk to us about some of the legal ramifications going on with this NBA Top Shot, and also he's a big San Francisco Giants fan, so he may throw a shekel or two on the Giants coming up this year as well too. All right, he's Casey Freelove. That's Charlie O. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. Thanks to everybody on Facebook Live and on the Stables Media YouTube page. If you miss any of the live broadcast, you can download and subscribe on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, or anywhere you download and subscribe to your podcast as well too. We're powered by Stables Media and sponsored by Viget. Use the MTMAR promo code to get in there and converse with us and compare your action with ours as well too. As always, gentlemen, it's been fun. Sorry, a little travel today. Tomorrow will be a better internet connection, and we'll be good. We'll be good with that. But as for the Make the Money and Run podcast, that's going to do it for Thursday. See you tomorrow, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the games, and get ready for conference tournament basketball next week. We'll be ready to go with that. Take care, everybody. Have a good afternoon, and good luck.